So You Want to Be a Filmmaker, episode 2. Holy kit. Do you see? Because it sounds like I'm saying shit, doesn't it? So, as we promised before, this is what I would consider the bare minimum kit to work as a videographer. This is more or less what I started out with. Took a lot of investment, as I discussed last episode, but these things were totally adequate to get out in the field and start making video content and getting paid for it. And a lot of this stuff in front of me at the moment are the exact pieces that I used 4 years ago when I kicked off, which just speaks to their longevity really and how useful they've been to me. So let's run down everything on the table and then we'll break them down piece by piece. DSLR camera. Full frame DSLR camera shoots 1080p with a basic kit lens. Tripod, which I'm going to have to sort of pull out of its bag and discuss properly. It's a fluid head or drag video tripod. Light stands here. 2 light stands for lights. 2 lights. Sony MPFS camcorder batteries, or MPF I think, I always get that wrong, and the charger, which runs off USB. Basic onboard shotgun mic. Stereo jack leads, extenders, splitters. A Zoom H1 battery-powered sound recorder with memory card, pair of basic Sony cans headphones, and 2 lavalier microphones, cheap lavalier microphones. So what we're covering here is the very basic, and again, this is what I was able to use to sort of set up my business by getting jobs with these bits of kit and reinvesting them. What we're looking at is enough to conduct single camera interviews with 1 or 2 subjects, and to cover non-sound content. In my case, it was exhibition stands, but you could use it to do very basic real estate stuff, any kind of basic promo, really basic product shots. You're not going to be able to sell yourself as a music video director or a commercial director with this stuff, probably, unless you're doing something really kind of clever and lo-fi, which I'm not clever enough to do. So let's break this down into what we've got. So obviously the most important thing you can own is a camera. DSLRs come in different brands and different flavours, and you'll hear the term full frame used a lot. So what does that mean? Well, some cameras have a full frame sensor and some cameras crop the sensor. So if you have, for example, a 35, well, let's make the maths easier on myself. If you have a 50mm lens on a full frame camera, the full 50mm is represented in your final image. If you have a crop sensor camera, so for example, there's something called a crop factor, which would be a crop factor of 1.5. So you would have to multiply that focal length. So a 50mm lens would be a 75mm lens effectively on a crop sensor camera. Crop sensor cameras are cheaper. There are a number of them on the market. I went in for because I'd saved up money, I went in for a full frame camera because I felt a full frame camera gives a better look. Basically, I think that it looks nicer. You get more bang for your buck in terms of your lenses. You get true focal depths. And because I was doing kind of product-y events type stuff, I wanted a full frame because I didn't have the best lens in the world, it would mean not having to stand all the way back. So basically on a crop sensor camera, your image is pushed in. There are lots of crop sensor cameras on the market. They're cheaper than the full frame ones. I chose to start with Canon's entry-level full frame, which was a 6D. I've since changed up my 6D Mark 1 from 6D Mark 2. I exchanged it at a camera shop. I essentially sold my Mark 1 to get a Mark 2. Even this only shoots 1080p, and this shoots 1080p in 50 or 60 frames, which the Mark 1 didn't. The Mark 1 shot 1080p, but its high frame rates were only at 720p. In the last few years, I've delivered very little in 4K. It's very useful to shoot in 4K. And I do so now, and the camera that I'm shooting on at the moment does shoot in 4K. But at the beginning of my career, I delivered very little in 4K. So a 4K capable camera such as a GH5 or one of the Sony A7 series wasn't really necessary to me. If you were getting into things now, I think the newer cameras do tend to offer 4K, and I know sort of the Canon series or I think some of the crop sensor cameras offer 4K. I'm not sure. It's not a market I'm in currently, but it's probably wise to get 4K. The camera I'm shooting on, in fact, shoots to 6K. A bunch of 8K cameras have just hit the market, 12K. That wasn't really necessary for me, I didn't think, so I didn't do it at the time. And this camera and its predecessor, the Mark 1, I built my business off the back of these. Good workhorse cameras. I do now have a number of lenses, but I didn't to begin with. This is the kit lens that comes with the Mark 1 or Mark 2 6D. So this camera body is normally about £1,000. And then this lens, this is the 24 to 105 mil kit lens. So this is a zoom lens. The aperture is not very wide, so it starts at 3.5 and that's only at 24 mil, and then goes all the way up to like 14 or something. Not the best lens in the world, but versatile, good all-rounder, pulls focus well. You can use it as a kind of not quite telephoto. This was able to get me through the first few jobs perfectly adequately. You can, with sufficient lighting, you can make it look like it's been shot on a more expensive lens, for reasons that I can go into in depth if you want later, perhaps when we talk about lenses. This I think is about £300-400. So this bundle initially was like £1,300-1,400, I believe, or £1,200. So single lens. This is also autofocus, which is useful for running and gunning. However, if you're going to do this, you should really learn to pull focus, and I made an effort to learn to pull focus because we're not photographers. Photography scum. Not really. I'm sorry, Simon and Marco. I didn't mean that. I meant it a little bit. So, camera, done. Let's talk about tripod. So you're going to need a video tripod. This is not my first tripod. This is a replacement. This is, however, of a similar quality. Niwa or Nuvir or whatever is one of the many Chinese brands on the market. I have a bunch of their stuff. It does the trick. You know, it's very entry level, but when you're getting set up, it's going to do it. So, video tripod, you need something nice and sturdy. They tend to be pretty beastly. Not all of them. The one I'm using at the moment is a lot more compact. It's a more expensive tripod. It stands quite tall. It has this fluid head, so that's important because you need to be able to get smooth kind of panning and tracking shots. That's kind of the name of the game, really. It's not set up at the moment, so it's just dragging horribly. But yeah, you want to get a nice smooth action so you can pan and also tilt, and you can adjust the level of drag. Your bog standard photography tripod isn't going to do that. Your bog standard tripod, it's just going to be somewhere to sit your camera. I have a lot of bog standard tripods and I use them as mic stands and stuff like that, or light stands in a pinch. Use it for a static camera, but the ability to sort of make these fluid movements, it's not all in the tripod. You know, the operator needs to know how to do that. That's really important. This was about £80, and it's done the trick, did the trick for years, you know. It might not be the most handsome bit of kit in the world, but it was more than adequate for a long time. So that's about £80 right there. And you can get these, usually, you know, Amazon are bastards, aren't they? But you can get this from Amazon and other retailers and stuff. All the stuff I'm talking about today, and this is something that I do keep an eye on, is the second-hand market, and we'll talk about that at the end of the video. Because there is a lot to be said for the second-hand market. So, camera, tripod. What's the next thing up the list? Probably lights. These two lights have been... I've had those... I've probably had those lights for about 10 years. I got them when I was doing kind of amateur stuff and just sort of messing around doing photography. So these are a brand called Yongnuo, yet another Chinese brand. And these just like little LED lights with barn doors. I used these on the shoots with Robert England for that movie. I've used these for so much stuff. They're fucking brilliant. This is a Yongnuo YN160. These are ancient, but they still work. I use these for the streams every week. They're great little lights. I don't know what to tell you. They're lightweight, they're compact, they're great for taking out on site, for kind of when you need to throw up an interview dead quick. You can use these lights. Just two are perfectly fine for a single person interview. I'll show you, here's some footage of that kind of thing. So what I'll tend to do is one as a key light, one as a backlight to get a bit of kick, do it in a dark room to get a bit of a dark background, or not if that's not what's wanted. And there you go, interview lights. They run on these Sony batteries, which I talked about before. So this was kind of the Sony standard for camcorder batteries, I think in the 90s. They come in different flavors. This is the and I always call it MPFS. They're not MPFS, they're NW. NW F970. So the 970 is kind of the biggest yield. Loads and loads and loads of equipment runs off these. The Blackmagic that I'm shooting on at the moment, my cinema camera, I have got an adapter to run off of these. The lights run off these. My slider runs off of these. We'll get to that. These are used so widely. You know, if you're going to go between this or a V-mount battery, I tend to use these. You charge them with a little USB charger there that just plugs into the mains. When these are empty, they can sometimes take like more than overnight to charge, like 10 or 12 hours, but you will get this ridiculous amount of battery life off of these. And they get quite bright. I can adjust the brightness there. They're really useful. I cannot state enough how useful these have been. These exact ones, like I say, are no longer on the market. I don't think they're equivalents. You can get lights such as this for about 40-50 quid each. I can't recommend these enough. These have been so useful. I've put these thread mount adapters on because this actually has a cold shoe. What's a cold shoe or a hot shoe? That's the shoe on top of the camera. So microphones and stuff. This goes on the shoe, this mic. So if I put that in the shoe, it can go like that, and you can have your light like that. I bought for these a couple of quid. These are just like a tripod thread adapter, so they then go on these light stands, so you can just thread that in. Dun, 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 dun. He said, awkwardly failing to thread the light in. And there you go. You got your light on a stand there. These are quite lightweight. They're not dreadfully heavy. They're not the best stands in the world, but they're not holding the heaviest light. Health and safety tip: do make sure that these Sony batteries are in. Make sure these are in tight, because if that goes off on someone's bloody head, you're going to be in trouble. We'll talk about insurance and due diligence. That's going to be a fun episode for us when we talk about all the fun admin things that people like. So there you go. Those lights. These stands are about 20 quid each. Very useful stands. Like I said, often you'll get kind of lighting bundles that you get a bundle of lights and stands. That's worth thinking about. I have some more advanced lights that we'll talk about later, but if you can get a bundle, great. These things knock around. They're not expensive. Again, secondhand market. They don't always come with the thread mount. Sometimes they have a different mount. Bloody useful. So 2 of those, 30-40 quid each, depending where you find them. Jolly good. I'm going to make some racket. Throw that down on the floor. There we go. Nobody wants to hear that. So, after that, let's talk about the most basic sounds you can have. So, your camera will carry a microphone. It will have an inbuilt microphone. They all do. And the accepted wisdom is that you never use the inbuilt mic. I mean, I would never, ever present anything to anyone using the inbuilt mic. So, this is an onboard, this is kind of an onboard stereo jack, 3.5mm Rode sort of shotgun mic. Runs on a 9-volt battery. It's not amazing. I mean, I wouldn't be mad about providing main audio from this. What I tend to use it for these days is any camera I've got running, I'll pop that in there, and that goes directly into the camera, and then the sound baked into the video footage is okay. It's decent. It's decent enough. And that is what I'll use to sync my sound to my main sound. So even as... Whoop, this is great, isn't it? It's like that geezer who electrocutes himself on that YouTube channel. Just mount that on. So that is there for me because even at the cheapest level, you should never just be recording one source of sound. An in-camera sound is not adequate. So this thing cost about 70 or 80 quid. That will give you better sort of baked in audio. You can run it from the camera to a boom. You can run it from the camera to a tripod. You just get a kind of a stereo jack extension. So this would be my kind of backup audio. Sometimes if I run and gun for a fun little YouTube thing, I'll put that on the camera because the audio doesn't matter that much. It doesn't need to be super crisp. What you really want is to record separate sound for all of your interviews and stuff. A, because you've got 2 sources, and B, if you record this, you can have a higher fidelity. You can record it in wave format. You can record it at like 48 kilohertz. And it gives you more function to edit afterwards. You can kind of properly post-produce and master your sound. So this, there are a range of recorders called from a company called Zoom. There are different ones available. Tascam is another company. For mics, you get Sennheiser. For me, I've kind of chosen, I'm a Rode and a Zoom guy. So all my different sound recorders and mics Rode. This is a Rode. My proper shotgun mic, my NTG 4 Plus, which we'll get into another time. Rode. This guy Rode. These lav mics are not Rodes. I'll talk about those in a second. I cheaped on those early on. So this is a Zoom H1. This costs about 70 or 80 quid as well. It runs off a single AA battery. The sound quality is great. If you want to, you'll notice these kind of receivers here. You can just use it as a hand mic and sync it afterwards. You get a windshield for it if you want. Really versatile. So what I would do for an interview normally is use these little lav mics. So these lav mics, I can't remember the brand, but if you want, I can find you a link for them. These cost me 20 quid each, and that's really cheap for a lav mic. These cost me 20 quid each about 5 years ago, and I still got them. They still work. They're brilliant. The sound quality is lovely, and they're really discreet little mics. So I've used these for weddings and interviews and you name it, fiction stuff. So lovely small little mic. So what you would do, easy peasy, you're talking to your talent, you put your line in there, mic here, you would normally just run it up your talent shirt. Hello. Rule of thumb, normally get your hand like this, here to there is the sort of distance you want. We would try and hide it more discreetly on a real shoot. Press go, recording sound. Now a couple of ways you could do this. Pop that in the talent's pocket and they're there. And yeah, I've said that when they're walking around and stuff. That's fine. It's not really what you want in a seated interview. I wouldn't do it because you're asking for trouble. What you would do, Sony headphones. These are on offer in Tesco seemingly constantly for but 20 quid. These are rock solid. I don't normally like Sony stuff, but these cans are fucking great. I lost a pair and I bought them back. They're seemingly indestructible. They're not the best sound quality in the world. I got a couple of Sennheiser phones for when I'm editing at my desk. But these, you run these off into the output, then the input, and then you can just hear all your sound through here. Another thing you can do, I've got these extensions. So what I would probably do, I would mount this on a tripod in front of the camera. I've run an extension lead up to the talent, up to the mic that's up their shirt, and an extension lead out to the cans to me, sat by the thing. So I'm watching the waveforms on the display of the little recorder here and checking that it's recording. Constantly monitoring sound. If you're a one-man band, if your sound goes wrong, your project could be fucked. And if you're not monitoring, I'm very rarely comfortable not monitoring sound. If someone else is monitoring sound, great. But if you're not monitoring sound, that can be catastrophic. And if you don't realise till you've got home, particularly if you've travelled to like Birmingham or London or wherever is far away from where you live, and the sound's done, that's it. You're over. It's bollocks. So little cheap lavs, £20 a pop. These extensions were about £7 each, and I've got 2 of those. A couple of splitters, because what you can also do is use that splitter. This isn't perfect, you don't have separate tracks, but keeping in mind this is your minimum entry-level kit. You run your splitter into here, and you can have 2 mics running off the single recorder, which is what Duncan and I do for It Ain't Broke. So that's a cheap way to get 2 mics in. So you could do a single camera 2-person interview if you wanted to. And also, there's a few little... I might as well go through these extra bits. A couple of windshields in there, the little fuzzy bits when you're outside. Also, these kind of L-shaped brackets are quite good. I've put this on a wedding guest, on a groom, in fact. Line in, see it's kind of L-shaped. Run your mic in, set it to record, lock it, and then wrap it in gaffer tape to stop anything from going anywhere. Because when it's sticking directly out the side, he can knock it, he can whatever, cocoon it in gaffer tape. You can even wrap it in a sock and then put it in gaffer tape and hide it. This has now become my backup. Well, this isn't even my backup anymore, bless it. This is like the 3rd one down the rung. It's got a bit of tape around it because it's got the thread knackered on a shoot by not me, and I'm still annoyed. You can hide. This is really great for hiding inside a set. So I know this is my backup, but really, I would go 2 separate sound recorders usually on a job these days. But this is great. You can hide this in pot plants and stuff, and I've done that. I've hidden it behind things and on people just to get that extra bit of sound. And I tell you what as well, it weighs nothing, bless it. I think the Zoom H1 Mark II is out now, which has replaced this, and I think it's at the same price point. You can get this in kind of guitar shops and stuff like that. So useful little thing. So in theory, this is your kind of bare minimum to go out and make money. It's sort of what I had. What you really want to do, and this is what I did, and I think I talked about it before, I was going off and doing video jobs with this kind of gear on the sly and then reinvesting the money because I still had a full-time job for a bit. But as I told you before, I just jumped out the plane and quit. But while I was doing that, I was reinvesting the money, and it's really important to reinvest. So after I'd done some jobs with this stuff, I bought a basic slider. I bought a basic slider quite early on. I've upgraded my mics. I got a gimbal. That was a kind of game changer, really, actually, in terms of the quality of content I could offer. Got some better lights. Got some different stands. Upgraded my tripod. We'll talk about the advanced kit later. But this is the bare minimum that you need. So you're probably looking for what we've got in front of us here. It's probably about a $2.5 grand spend. I haven't done the actual maths, which was stupid of me. But you look at about $2.5 grand to spend. And like I said in the previous episode, I saved up and was able to shell out. And there were certain things among this that I bought before that I'd sort of added to the kit. The other thing, and it's a bit of an elephant in the room really, that I've been thinking about since I started this series, and I didn't mention last time, is you do also have to have a computer. And the last couple of videos, I am a person who, I've been building my own computer since I was a teenager. When I was a kid, we had to sort of get hold of second-hand old 386s and do it with that because we couldn't afford a nice one. And then when I got my own jobs when I was a teenager, I could afford to build my own. When I started out, my first editing rig, I built myself from scratch, and I appreciate not everybody can do that. And I was able to build a rig for about 500 quid, which I only stopped using October 2019, and I replaced it with a laptop. And the laptop cost me about 1,200 quid, and I priced up a job to pay for that. So I was able to build a computer for 500 quid, and that was adequate for the. And the early more basic jobs of this kind of gear will be less sophisticated. They require less processing power. Now I'm getting into editing 4K and proper kind of color correction and 3D and After Effects, and you need more grunt. But you can bring in a sort of basic computer for about 400 or 500 quid. I tend to take for granted that I always have a computer in my life because I'm a computery person. So, that's something worth thinking about as well. And chances are you already have one, but don't underestimate the kind of poke that an editing computer has. I do think people tend to overstate how much power you need. Like, you do need a lot of power, but people act like it's this completely face melting thing. If you're editing sort of 1080p, you're not going to need like the fastest gaming rig in the world. Unfortunately, we're getting into the times of kind of 4K and 6K and 8K and stuff, but you will need a computer as well. So I think to get up and running fully, you're going to need like 2 or 3 grand. Like I say, but my method was I saved up the lump of money I talked about last time. I already had a computer, and I chipped away at various things over the years to kind of build up the kit. And then it was very important to reinvest money. And something that I do a lot, something I did before, here's a thing I used to do before the pandemic, which kind of bollocks me when the pandemic hit. So if I need something, and particularly if someone approaches me for a job and I don't have the kit for it, and I know I can do it with said kit, I will price up that job to include covering that kit. Not in a way that sounds like, you're not kind of ripping anybody off, but if someone says, I need you for 3 days, and I can look at 3 days and go, okay, that will cost X, but I will need Y. And if X and Y are similar costs, or a big chunk of the cost, and I've got my rent and stuff covered, I'll charge that job based on that, and I'll buy the thing. So what I did do to help my credit score, what I used to do, I don't take finance. I don't have a credit card. I don't have an overdraft. I'm not into any of that. I don't like owing banks and stuff money. What I would do is before the job, because obviously payment comes after the job, I would buy the thing I needed on finance, and then as soon as the invoice came in, I'd pay the finance off. So for example, when I upgraded this, I traded in, the trading value wasn't very high, but I traded in I think about 600 quid, so I still owed another kind of 400 or 500 quid for this, so I got that on finance. And then I paid the finance back within, I think, 30 days of taking it out, because I got paid from the job. And it helps your credit score. My laptop, I got asked to do on-site edits for 3 days for a job, which more than covered a kind of good meaty laptop. And I thought, fine, I'm going to get a laptop on finance, and as soon as it clears, pay off the finance. And then it helps your credit score, and you've got new kit. And I was able to sit in the Birmingham NEC in a corner editing these guys' footage on that machine. They were super happy to have it. It worked out really well. Pandemic's kind of bollocks that. And please, I'm not saying go out and take finance deals all over the place. I do it because I'm quite disciplined with my money, and I know if I've got the money, I will put it back. I don't like being in anybody's debt if I can avoid it. So that kind of worked for me. So there you go. Holy kit. Here's the most basic kit. Today's video is quite lo-fi because I use these little lights to light my scenes and stuff. I normally shoot this series on this camera because it's a bit more versatile than having a full cinema camera, but I wanted to show it on camera, obviously. We're in wide as well because I'd normally use the kit lens, but the kit lens is here, so I've got my 14mm on there for that. So I hope that was interesting. Any questions, as usual, put them below. I can't remember what I had in mind for the next episode, but that will come soon. I'll have a look. I do want to talk about branding yourself and your uniform if you want one and stuff like that. So that will be coming soon. Goodbye.